Hello, everybody watching or listening from YouTube or Spotify. Welcome back to episode 3 of the Letter Podcast with myself, Aiden Brueck from the Green Sports Letter, and to my left, veteran sports writer from the Canton Repository, Mike Popovich. Today, obviously, we're going to be talking about Week 3 of high school football. We're also going to be talking about some of these differing experiences we had at college football game day on Saturday. No, neither of us were in Ann Arbor, thankfully.
Neither of us were at Notre Dame either.
Neither of us were at South Bend either, which was...
You were at a great place.
I was at a great place. You were not. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to the Ohio State game this Saturday, and I really remember all of it. It was phenomenal. I tailgated. Thank you. Shout out to Dominic Magnoli, who set up our tailgate. Appreciate you, man. You're awesome. Thank you for your hospitality. But I was able to tailgate right in front of the stadium, watch the team up north's game against Texas, where they got absolutely stomped. And then got to watch the Northern Illinois versus Notre Dame game with a smile on my face before we went into the stadium. And I actually was able to, I ran into current Ohio State baseball recruit and Green graduate Brady Rollison at the tailgate, who was there and was
everybody
elated to see me.
All the good people,
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, college football game days I think are so much fun. I mean, I'm a summer guy and I'm kind of sad summer's over, but when you go out to a college football campus, I was up at Kent State yesterday, and get out of the car, you're walking through the parking lot where all the tailgating is going on, and about 150 cornhole games are going on and stuff, and it's like when you do this job, you kind of miss that. Kind of miss those experiences because you don't really you can't really do that on a game day. Yeah. But we can talk about what we saw at the games later on. You saw...
Well, I saw a shutout, and he saw a shit show.
Yeah. It's... the way you put it, it's from a Kent State perspective. I mean, they lost to at FCS St. Francis 23-17, and when you're trying to stamp a losing streak, and when you're trying to get your program back on track and everything, and you have a winnable game on your schedule, I mean, you got to win, and they didn't get the job done, but we can talk about that.
In fact, honestly, I think it'd be better off if we just did not talk about that game.
Well, and that's just as fine too, because I wrote about it yesterday, and probably a good idea to maybe move past it, because it was just yesterday, the day before that, and the day before that, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, obviously brunt of it happening on Friday, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday, week 3 of high school football really took off and took its shape. We saw a lot of interesting stories and storylines kind of, build and for some of them end. Massillon, McKinley, both taking losses in week 3. McKinley against, I want to say it was Detroit
Cass Tech.
Yes.
Which is a great team. But McKinley plagued by turnovers and penalties, which is something that their head coach Antonio Hall has said that he's been trying to work on for the past 4 or 5 years that he's been there, and still hasn't changed. So
yeah, those are things that, I mean, you can't just, I've seen games where, okay, a team might have 9 penalties, team might have 10 penalties, but that's like a one-off or something like that. I mean, you can't let problems like that fester through a whole season, because you're just not going to get very far. Mm-hmm. You're going to be playing teams in the coming weeks that, as a defending Federal League champion, they're gonna be coming after you, and I guess that's probably the only point I was making there. But
you just can't let those problems linger. Well, I was going to say, and Massillon at the end too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can put that in there. I think the quote from Antonio Hall after the game was, we got to circle the wagons. Well, yeah, you can't, you just can't. You got to eliminate those mistakes that cost your team opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you really want a tell-all about that game, the only thing that tells it all is the fact that both teams decided to skip the handshake line after the game. And if it's that chippy, then that's a problem. And things will fizzle back down, and it's going to be all good. And everybody's going to bounce back. So obviously not a highlight of the season for either teams, really. Even Detroit Cass Tech that came out with the win. So not a highlight for either of the squads. But they're going to come back in week 4 when McKinley goes into Federal League play, and Detroit Cass Tech goes back to Detroit, and they're both gonna learn from this. And I mean, it's high school football, so no matter what happens, school is always gonna come.
Yeah, that's kind of a shame. We saw at the end of the McKinley Massillon game last year what happened at the end. That's people like to talk about that game, and how traditional and respectful it is around the country. You just can't let things like that happen at the end,
Absolutely.
and no matter who starts it, you just can't let that happen. And if they skip the handshake at the end of that game against Detroit Cass Tech, well, there must have been some chippiness going on in there as well. So McKinley 1-2 on the season, obviously has some things to fix, and very little time to do it before the meat of their schedule, which is the Federal League games and the Massillon game, is before them.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to see McKinley go on into their Federal League play next week. Now, if you could just give me 5 seconds to see who they're
2.
Okay. Well, that
3.
you don't
4.
Okay. Well, that doesn't count. All right.
Don't you hate when people do that? Give me 5
yeah.
seconds, and then smart aleck me starts counting.
But we are next week, McKinley going to go into Federal League play against Glen Oak, and I'll just say this: Glen Oak hasn't had their a great run of things in these first 3 weeks either.
Now, Glen Oak with a lot of new faces in their lineup this year, and the thing is, I don't know if there's anybody around that has played who they've played at the start of the season. I mean, Villa Angela St. Joseph with an Ohio State commit as a running back. Massillon speaks for itself. Then they go play Austin Town Fitch on the road, which is always a tough place to play. So, if next week's game is going to be one team that's had some issues, so far this season, is going to come out on top in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, I mean, no matter what happens next week, there's going to be a positive for one of those teams.
Right.
And whether it's Glen Oak kind of finding their way, or McKinley kind of, fixing their discipline problems with penalties, both of those teams are going to come out with a positive for next week. Glen Oak, who now have fallen to 3 losses in the first 3 weeks, outscored 122-7 in all 3 other games. Now, I will say that most of that can be attributed to Massillon's game, but also the fact that you're letting this much up to Fitch, and then also the team from
Villa Angela
St. Joseph. Those teams kind of, piling on. It really gives those kids a sense of real physicality and, adversity that they're going to go into in the Federal League games. And I will say that I've always been of the opinion that all teams, whether you're good or bad, you need to play a team that's better than you.
Oh, definitely.
100%. You always need to play teams that are better than you in the first 3 weeks. The fact that Ohio State can pay Western Michigan $1.4 million to go into the shoe and then get get absolutely curb stomped. That doesn't show how good Ohio State is. It shows, okay, well, you can beat up on a MAC school, but it doesn't show really, hey, how's Ohio State going to fend up against the SEC? And that goes the same for, these Massillon schedules and these, Glen Oak schedules where Glen Oak is learning instead of just Massillon going into, this one school and getting beat up. But Massillon didn't do that this week.
No, well, and Massillon hasn't done that this year with who they've played. I mean, they play Glen Oak in week 2 every year, and that game for the past 5 years has been pretty in favor of Massillon. But Massillon this year, starts out the season with we talked about before the NFL Academy team from the UK, and Bergen Catholic, who has won multiple state championships in New Jersey. Now I think they separate the parochial and public schools titles in New Jersey. So I said last week I'm not an expert on New Jersey
I'm not an expert
so I
on
learned
New Jersey
something.
Football either.
I learned something this week, and I learned that this Bergen Catholic team is pretty good.
100%.
So, Nate Moore talks about this is like a 52 week. I forgot what the exact quote.
It's a 52 week. Let me find this, but he said that it was this is a 52-week journey. If you are focused on just the outcomes and not the process, you are focused on the wrong thing.
Right.
And that,
I could see where he's coming from there. It's just it's a game we played, we lost, what do we take from it, going forward here?
I mean, besides Glen Oak, another Federal League team, Lake had their first shutout since week 5 of their last season, which says a lot. Lake's 2023 season was outstanding. And now that they're able to shut people out now, and kind of get their groove back after week 5 of last season, that might be a teller for how scary they're going to be for other Federal League opponents and whether or not they're going to be a Federal League championship contender. I couldn't tell you that. But what I could tell you is it's anybody's game at any given time. And Lake is notoriously one of those teams that can take it away in a heartbeat.
Oh, yeah. And they're a team that, they just, reload, retool every year. I mean, they lose a great running back, Nate Baker, who's graduated and stuff. Yeah. And over the years, they just come across with, just the next man up routine or whatever. And, you got a guy like Charlie Christopher on defense who comes from great lineage of
Lake football.
Of Lake football with his dad, Matt. And, and Ryan Lippy, with his dad, Steve. So, they're going to be there at the end, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So we also saw Hoover take down Akron North. North falls to 3 losses in the first 3 weeks. Hoover has won its second straight, becoming 2-1. A lot of 2-1 teams in the Federal League now. Green as well beat Talmadge 14-6. Anthony Fortunato returning to punt for the Bulldogs after a strong, fast start from Talmadge. Now, what's it called? And then Anthony McMichael III for Green, the junior, taking it to the house within 30 yards to the end zone. And I just wanted to make light of the quote that I received from McMichael, and that is probably the most memorable quote that I've ever gotten from a player before, or a coach for that matter. He tells me, "All I remember is once I got through that first line, I saw my blocks. I was sniping through there. I was trying to get through there. I saw the black end zone, and I was like, man, I need to get in there. As soon as I saw it, I was like, it's time to get in there. And that is quite possibly the best quote that I've ever heard in my entire journalistic career, is the fact that he goes, I was sniping through there. Now, McMichael has taken a much more prominent role in Green's game plan. He's taken a much more prominent role with another junior, Evan Reed, who have both combined for over 400 rushing yards in these first 3 weeks, and that is incredible for a Green team to have now after their 2021 season to have a consistent run game against any team that they play is huge for the Bulldogs, because I remember in 2022 and in 2023 a lot of 5 wide. Much 5 wide, and Geis, or Green's head coach Mark Geis, would always talk about how, or not always, but he now talks about it because he admits it. He talks about the fact that it wasn't hard for other teams to kind of crack the code and fill in the pieces of the puzzle that Green was going to pass every single play, and whether it be a pass option or a just straight up, let's send everybody on a go down the field and see what happens. It still wasn't enough because you're playing against other teams that have all these, big kids that can get through the line, but Green didn't have anybody. And now that Green has, this power back in Anthony and Evan, and then they also have, a good lead blocker in AJ Fortunato when he's playing fullback. They have the pieces and they can get it done. And their game against Talmadge just proved that.
Right.
And the fact that they're able to make all these defensive stops and hold Talmadge to just 6 points. Now, I will say that the Talmadge score, even though it says 6, it was a failed 2-point conversion, and that only gave them 6. That backfired in the end. But, at the end of the day, they got it done. And that can really be attributed to, some of these new wide receiver faces that we're seeing, and Caden Gregory, who's a senior, Anthony Fortunato, obviously, on that punt return team, and then Anthony McMichael III and Evan Reed that are kind of filling in these roles that have been left from the seniors that graduated last year.
Yeah, I've learned something about Green. They've got they've got these guys that they haven't had Antonio Martin this year. He's been out without a knee injury, and you're talking about these new receivers coming in to fill in while he's out. And another thing is, if I ever have to cover a Green game, you're saying that Anthony McMichael is a great quote.
Anthony McMichael makes a great quote. He makes a phenomenal quote.
I'll go to him then.
You go to him. You go to him if you want a good quote. You go to Anthony McMichael III. And I know he is not listening, but he will. I'll make him listen.
You better. I mean, you got a lot of people at school that you can
I have the sources. I just after my lunch period, I can just walk down to Coach Geis's classroom and be like, hey, could I have a couple of quotes?
There you go.
I mean, no, but notably this week we had AJ Fortunato out. I do not know the specifics, but I know that AJ Fortunato, I couldn't tell you if he's going to be back next week. But I can tell you that his presence or the fact that his presence was non-existent in this game really showed. But it was kind of picked up. You saw 2 kids really picking it up. You saw Wyatt Knowlton, who's a senior, who kind of filled in at inside linebacker for him. And you saw Anthony Swank, who's currently a junior, also filling in at that inside linebacker position. Wyatt had been playing, or Knowlton had been playing primarily on the line since Mike Shaw is out currently with an ACL injury he suffered in the lacrosse season. And you've seen all these new kids kind of come into the line. You see Dario Lombardi, who's currently a junior for the Bulldogs, and he's huge. He missed the entirety of last season with an ACL injury. And now Dario Lombardi, who's come back with vengeance, and he wants to taste the blood. and he's gonna go out there every week, and he's gonna take every team to Pound Town, and that sounded weird, but you get what I'm saying, and you understand that this kid is a problem, and he's good, and he's gonna be a problem.
If I got it, people got it.
If you got it, okay. Just needed to make sure. Because if you say Pound Town, you never, not safe for work.
Yeah.
But let's just talk about the game that you were at instead of the game I was at this weekend. You were at Perry versus Warren Harding. Tell me a little bit about that one.
Well, this was a game that came down to the final minutes. Perry. Well, I don't want to say they led most of the way because Warren Harding scored first. Perry ties the game. Perry takes the lead on a safety when deep in their own territory, Warren Harding lines up to punt. The snap goes over the punter's head into the end zone for a safety. Now, Perry did, I thought, a great job of containing one of the better players that you'll see in Northeast Ohio, Chaz Coleman, who is the Warren Harding quarterback. Final drive of the game, Coleman leads Harding down the field, 90 yards, touchdown, then comes up with a game-saving interception on a Perry Hail Mary at the end of the game. What really seemed disappointing in the eyes of Perry was Zach Slates, their head coach, just was disappointed in how tough they really played as a team. Perry had a lot of opportunities to really put this game away early on, and they just couldn't. Too many turnovers. 5 turnovers in all, 4 fumbles, and I believe they lost 2 of them deep in their own territory. So Perry goes down to 2-1 after having back-to-back shutout wins to start of the season, and they open federally play next week against Lake, and Zach Slate said, hey, we got to be ready to play because Lake is tougher than Warren Harding.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the one thing I'll say about Perry is that the one thing that you can always count on Perry for having is a consistent run offense. And whether or not Perry wanted to run it into the ground for this game, clearly they had to kind of spread it out and try all these different things to try and put together the puzzle that is Warren Harding football. And if they can't get it done, they can't get it done. But Warren Harding is going to put up a fight no matter what. Perry's going to put up a fight no matter what. And despite the final score, I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that it was much closer than the final score would say.
Yeah, like I said, I think Perry should have. This one should have been in their pocket earlier in the game, and they throw the ball more than they have in the past. They have Austin Maddox, who's a quarterback, is a really good athlete, but the quote from Zach Slate saying, we're not playing tough as a team right now. That's what really strikes you, because when you think of Perry football, you think toughness as a whole.
Yeah,
and so they have to, address that this week. And turnovers. They just really, they can really come back to bite you in a game.
They do.
And it really did Perry a couple of times. Like I said, 2 opportunities deep in Harding territory, and they turned the ball over.
Yeah, and that's never fun. Never fun. Let's just kind of quick fire through a couple of these scores that we saw in week 3. We saw Louisville and Northwest coming out on top, 35-28. Fairless and Claymont. Fairless took that one 28-6. Tuslaw and Riverview. Tuslaw won 48-6. Streetsboro and Alliance. Streetsboro took that one 56-6. And then Minerva and Springfield. Springfield took that one 13-7. So we're seeing a lot of common themes here this week. It looks like the number 6 is everybody's lucky number. Put that together 3 times, you got a little bit of a devilish problem if you can't score more than 6 points there.
Yeah, and you talked about some Pac-7 teams. Northwest being 3-0, Fairless being 3-0. Tuslaw off to a good start under Brock Dial, head coach. They're 2-1, and I think the Pac-7 season opens next week, and there's two matchups that are pretty intriguing to start the week. Northwest plays Manchester, and let's talk about Manchester for a second.
3-0 start.
3-0 start for the first time in like a long time.
Years.
Yeah.
Before I was born.
Well, I don't know about that.
Before you were alive.
No, I know that's not the case, but
I'm just playing.
I know you are. But anyway, this is a program that's been for years, dominated the Pac-7 under Jim France, their head coach, and who won like hundreds of games. And Manchester won like hundreds of Pac-7 titles. And for about the last 3 or 4 years, they had fallen upon hard times, and now they're back to being Manchester. I mean, they went to play Marlington last week, who is a decent EBC program, and they shut them out like 40-0. I mean, that's something. And so there's great times going on at Manchester right now. New high school, new football stadium, and
They got all the tools.
and back to their old winning ways. So that's going to be an interesting game on Friday, Manchester versus Northwest. And I think the other Pac-7 game to watch will be Fairless versus Triway, two undefeated teams. Fairless 3-0. They won just 4 games last year, although their record was kind of deceiving for a little bit because there were a lot of close games and they just couldn't close out. And now they're off to a good 3-0 start with a sophomore, Mikey Ritterbeck is the quarterback, and they have a really good running back named Peter Killey, very good wide receiver named Cam Carl. AJ Sarbaugh, tremendous young coach, who I could see down the road, the big schools are going to come after him, when the time comes. But he likes it down there, and he's really built a real successful football program down there at a school that, prior to his arrival, just had bits and pieces of success in football.
Yeah, I know that we're kind of, this is, we were talking about the Pac-7, but I just want to kind of take it up north for a little bit. Hoban shut out Buchtel this week. The Knights forced 10 turnovers in a shutout win. Now, the one common theme that we saw this week in any game that was in Northeast Ohio was rain. Rain and more rain. And I braved the elements to do some live coverage on Green's game. My friend Mike was snug and sound between 2 radio broadcasters in the comfort of the press box.
Well, because the live coverage that I have to do requires me to work on my laptop. But I'll tell you what, I know we're going to go off track here for a little bit, but I was really impressed with how much work, because this was like the first football game you could go to this year, because you had to deal with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which we should talk about someday, your experience with that.
We'll talk about Weathervane Playhouse's flooding problem.
But, well, we don't have to talk about that. But anyway, we can... No, I was kind of following your game, and you were doing all that work from the field, doing all these videos and providing all your commentary, and it's like raining in buckets outside. And
I did have a golf umbrella.
You did have a golf umbrella.
We don't have to toot my horn that hard here.
So,
but
for those of you who read the Greed Sports Letter, you got a good man covering your team.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I didn't tell him to say that.
No, I mean that.
No, I didn't tell him to say that.
Because he knows me enough to know that I don't BS, so.
I'm nodding my head for all you listeners. Anyways, but let's also just take a look at West Branch defeating Girard 48-7. Jeremiah Thomas for West Branch, 2 touchdowns on it. 130 yards on 14 carries. If you're, um, you know, you're agile on your feet and you're agile and you can, give the ball some agility in the air. And if you can do both of those things, you're gonna be just fine in today's game. And when you're running and passing for a combined 266 yards, you're gonna be good. And even the fact that Boston Mullenix for West Branch also carried 14 times for 138 yards. That's like a lot of yards for an individual to have. If you're looking at 260 whatever 266 yards for their quarterback all purpose, and then you're looking at Boston Mullenix getting 138 yards. I mean, West Branch is going to be a problem.
They have so many weapons, and again, we're not making predictions or anything like that. But if there's a team that's probably, you're thinking, oh, they're going to win the league title, it's probably West Branch in the Eastern Buckeye Conference because, just too many weapons, too many. I mean, I can't remember. I can't remember a game of the last time they were held to single digits, and it was probably a couple of years ago, and I forgot. But they're strong. They're strong. I know they lost a couple people from teams that have gone a few rounds in the playoffs, but they just keep reloading with talent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Close attention to was Sandy Valley and East Canton. SV taking East Canton 55-16 with a victory. And they had 4 interceptions. Or Sandy Valley had 4 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries. And then even Micah Hoffarth and Jaden Flory taking 2 of those interceptions back for touchdowns. 2 pick sixes in a game?
Yeah, that's
all I can say is damn.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
I'm trying to remember the last time I saw one, let alone 2 in a game. But if you're Sandy Valley, I mean, they're coming off an 0-2 start. This is the Inter Valley Conference, but they're not in the same division with East Canton. Yeah. They have North and South divisions, but they're not really geographically right. But if you're 0-2, they hadn't been 0-2 in a while, so they get their first win. Defense dominates in that game, and they also have a player who, when we were talking earlier today about Kent State losing to St. Francis, they also have a player who's committed to St. Francis by the name of Lucas Gilland, who he caught 2 long touchdown passes, and he had a kickoff return for a touchdown. I saw him play a game last year where he had an interception that saved the game for Sandy Valley. So he's going to be an All-Ohio player for them. But 55-16 over East Canton. Boy, it's what they needed.
Yeah,
after
another
a tough
game.
Start.
Yeah, another game. Taking a look at Walsh Jesuit against St. V. Walsh Jesuit routs them 52-0. And wow, we're jumping around here a little bit because my notes are disorganized. But Malvern, Harrison Central. Malvern comes in and defeats Harrison Central 38-28. Jared Withrow throwing for 242 yards, 3 touchdowns for the Malvern Hornets to keep them 3-0, undefeated on the season. And then Rodney Smith taking all 3 of those touchdown passes from Withrow and kind of showing off how he is the
primary. It's pretty obvious he's the target. I think it's pretty obvious he's the first option. And the fact that Withrow also has a touchdown run really speaks to how Malvern's really adapted to the game today, and kind of getting those two-way quarterbacks.
Yeah, Malvern has always been a really, really good basketball school and really fun teams to watch. But this football program over the past few years has really come on strong. Jared Withrow, basketball player, multi-talented quarterback. Rodney Smith, basketball player, multi-talented quarterback. Small school where a lot of athletes play multiple sports and they play them very well. So, Malvern's going to be probably the team to beat in their half of the Inter-Valley Conference, which is the North Division. They had a great, I believe they won 9 games during the regular season last year. Went a few games into the playoffs, and be anxious to see how they fare.
Yeah. So hope you guys, hope all you listeners, whether it be on YouTube or Spotify, find Mike and I on social media. You can find me at Twitter or on x.com/Aiden the Brew. Now verified, which
they keep asking me get verified, but I am at M Popovich REP on X.
Yeah.
And send us questions, because we would love to answer questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
As part of our weekly get-togethers here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just tweet at us on Twitter, either of us, and you can find our official Twitter account at The Letter Pod. And everywhere you would find this would be YouTube, Spotify. Share it with your buddies, share it with your friends. If you care about high school football, at least a little bit. So, everybody, have a great week ahead of you, and have a very, very nice rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.